Nobody expected the Nintendo Switch to be as huge a success as it has been, owing to the fact that Nintendo looked like they were in a bit of a pickle following the dismal performance of the Wii U. Does anyone else remember how many people thought the Switch was doomed, and Nintendo itself, before it was released? A good reminder, friends, to not listen to tribalist idiots, especially if they've never played ARMS. Nintendo needed to innovate rather than simply iterate, and the Switch has been exactly that. A console and handheld hybrid boasting an amazing array of exclusives, and the best place for plenty of indie games on the market. The best Switch games run the gamut from Nintendo's almost untouchable classic properties to third-party hits that feel custom-made for the platform. The hybrid console of dreams has been around for well over a half a decade at this point, and in that time it's managed to amass a vast library of games. In the past, Nintendo have famously failed to garner the full support of third parties, but the Switch's astounding variety of games, whether that's indie or AAA, from a lot of genres and publishers has led to the console's staggering amount of success. And then there's Nintendo being more willing to dive deep into their library of licenses, with games from the 3DS, GameCube, and more getting another chance to shine. Also F-Zero, with a weird battle royale game that doesn't count. It doesn't count, okay? It just doesn't. Make a new one. With thousands of titles already available, it's no easy task to whittle it down to just the absolute best Switch games. We've tried to opt for variety and include some that are supremely underrated in the mix with the already classic games, and we've also tried to seriously limit the amount of entries per franchise. Ahead of what's believed to be a new Switch console sometime in the next year or so, here are the best Nintendo Switch games of all time. But before then, let's give the people what they want to hear. God, just an instant injection of dopamine every single time. Number 20, Neon White. For Switch owners who love running headfirst into a brick wall over and over and over until they get it just right, Neon White is one of the most addictive games of all time, let alone on the Switch. A speedrunner's delight, few games manage to scratch the perfectionist itch quite as well as this one. Part FPS puzzle with card mechanics, part visual novel, Neon White focuses on the titular Neon White as he tries to figure out how he winded up in heaven, and what all of his crime associates are doing there too. Even those who don't often find themselves battling on time trial leaderboards will find something to latch onto in this often hilarious, always compelling marvel that somehow balances all of its genres marvellously well. It's probably the best FPS game on the Switch. Neon yellow for life, bro. Number 19, Snipperclips. It's a bit of a crying shame that Snipperclips came out when it did, early in the Switch's life. While many people were busy with Breath of the Wild, a charming little co-op game couldn't quite receive the recognition it deserved for promoting creativity and just generally being a lovely time, and a game that actually uses most of the Switch's forgotten gimmicks to brilliant effect. Snipperclips is a platformer that sees you teaming up to cut shapes to help your avatar, which you can also cut up, make their way through levels with there being more than one route to complete a puzzle. It'll have you laughing and maybe even pulling out your hair if your teamwork isn't on point, but you'll definitely have fun no matter what. You can even use the Joy-Con IR sensor with it, which you totally forgot was a thing until just then. Or you didn't forget, because you watch beat-em-ups and his long flowing mane. Behold how it glistens. Number 18, Downwell. An utter gem on whichever platform it's on, Downwell simply does not lose its appeal despite originally launching in 2015. Its Switch port is one of the only games which makes effective use of tape mode, which orientates the handheld into portrait mode. Adding to that, Downwell is also a game pretty much anyone can pick up and play, thanks to it needing barely any inputs, though mastering it is another task entirely. Rock hard and punishing, Downwell casts you down a well with only gun boots for company. Procedurally generated levels ensure no two runs are ever the same, so you can never be too comfortable with it. It's not so much a game that you will beat in quick time, rather one that will make every inch of progress feel like a mile. It's never unfair, it's just asking you to grow and learn the more you play. Fair to say, we are pretty down bad for this game, and best of all, it costs pretty much nothing. What are you going to do, buy this or Thief Simulator, which has been on the eShop for like £1 for the last 10 years? You know what to do. Number 17, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Nintendo are famously pretty clingy when it comes to their most famous properties, which is a lesson they probably learned after that whole CDI fiasco, so it would be a bit of a surprise to see them lease Mario to Ubisoft, even more so when it was announced as a crossover between he and Rabbids, basically gaming's minions. That's still a sentence that doesn't make a lot of sense, and it also doesn't make sense just how good Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle somehow turned out to be. Effectively XCOM for a younger audience, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle gives Mario a gun and some very insistent sidekicks as they take part in turn-based combat where the odds may never be in your favour. Sure, it's not revolutionary, but it proves just how malleable Mario is, and also somehow completed the impossible mission of making Rabbids seem less awful in general. Now that's impressive game design right there, guys. Nintendo and Ubisoft did create a sequel, Sparks of Hope, which is also excellent and still a bit weird to think about, but for our money, their first outing was the best. Number 16, Animal Crossing New Horizons. While it will always be associated with a worldwide event that we don't like to talk about, Animal Crossing New Horizons still likely would have been an absolute phenomenon upon release. The most accessible game in the series, though still with loads of the Animal Crossing oddities that are its DNA, New Horizons invited tens of millions of players to an island paradise back in 2020, and few wanted to leave. Though the post-launch support felt a little bit disappointing, especially for how far apart updates actually were, New Horizons' brand of cozy living is going to be a fond memory for many for years from now. Even picking it up in the years since will provide you with a game that can provide 100 hours of entertainment at a minimum, with many more on top of that if you want to build a monument to Godzilla at your own pace. If you're sick of games that demand the world of you, take a trip on Dodo Airlines, then try not to scream the first time you encounter Pietro. Who made you? Also why? Why? Number 15, Splatoon 3. Nintendo are typically considered to be the rulers of local multiplayer, probably because the other big boys can't be arsed with it anymore, but over the past few years they've earned plenty of critical acclaim for their online offerings, with Splatoon in particular being one of the fastest selling franchises for Nintendo. If you're looking to jump into this ink and paint soaked world, the most recent release, Splatoon 3, is your best shout. In a bizarre post-apocalypse, players must fight each other with paint and decorate the surroundings to come out on top. Don't expect Quake from Splatoon 3. It's meant as a party shooter with social capabilities that is something only Nintendo could make. Well, Square Enix are also trying to copy them with foam stars. Let's see how that works out for them, eh? With a lengthy campaign mode and compelling multiplayer options that are accessible for players of most ages, Splatoon 3 is an important addition to anyone's Switch library. Number 14, Octopath Traveler 2. Judging by how many developers and publishers are trying to pivot away from the traditional RPG that had its biggest boom in the 90s, you may think that the demand for them is also on the wane. Octopath Traveler 2, which feels like it comes from the SNES era in all the best ways, proves that you don't need to make your RPG an open world with a $1 billion budget to look and play great. You control many different characters in a bulging party with the stories unfolding the deeper into it you go. You'll no doubt be tossing and turning trying to pick your favourites. While it may not look like modern Final Fantasy, Octopath Traveler 2 is a deep and rewarding adventure that will endear itself to those who prefer classic Final Fantasy games that were seen on earlier Nintendo systems. If you do fall in love with Octopath, and you will if you give it the time, be sure to go back and play its predecessor, though the sequel does fix a lot of that game's issues and hang-ups. Also, they released 2 games called Octopath Traveler. Gotta give them a bit of credit for that, right? Number 13, Fire Emblem Three Houses. The Switch has allowed Nintendo to give some of their less appreciated franchises a bit of a glow up, and perhaps none have benefited from that more than Fire Emblem. The tactical RPG series has always had its fans, but for the most part, a lot of mainstream people just associated the franchise with the sword-wielding characters in Smash Bros. Now it's a juggernaut unto itself, with Fire Emblem Three Houses being the biggest success yet, and arguably the best the series has ever been. Set in a school for aspiring military officers, you control a mercenary with a mysterious past, who just so happens to become a professor for the school. The students are split across 3 houses, and the actions and choices you make during the game will affect which house you ally with, fundamentally changing the second half of the experience. If you love strategy games with plenty of replayability and also eating loads of random meals, Fire Emblem Three Houses is just for you. Number 12, Pikmin 4. You know what they say, 4th time's the charm. While Pikmin may never be the absolute system shifter that Nintendo keeps hoping it will be, as it's basically an RTS game when you think about it, Pikmin 4 represents the franchise at its most ambitious and effortlessly charming. With Olimar in need of saving from mysterious shrubbery, you're tasked with getting together the rest of the rescue corps and making friends with the curious Pikmin on PNF 404, and then throwing in new friends at all kinds of dangers. Pikmin 4 pulls back on the intense time management crunch of its predecessors while also adding more Pikmin to the party to create probably the most complete experience in the series to date. Plus, it's hard not to be immediately besotted by a game that tasks you with fetching a Game Boy Advance SP. Hey, we did a video on that. Number 11, Undertale. While it may look simple, Undertale is anything but. The combat system offers innovations everywhere, including the ability to avoid combat altogether with compassion, and an irreverent tone with a lot of heart that's easy to be charmed by. There's a reason why Undertale has perhaps the most effusively devoted fanbase of any game out there. The community is feverish and hangs on the game's every word. You travel across the underground as the only human and come across an eclectic crop of characters. People love Sans, but Mettaton is clearly the best, guys. I mean, come on. With a unique battle system that is more of a rhythm experience than a conventional RPG, which plays a lot better than it sounds on paper. It's challenging while also being fairly brief, but with the storyline opening up the more you replay and make different choices, the richer your time with this modern classic becomes. Number 10, Dead Cells. A self-styled roguevania with more going for it than meets the eye, Dead Cells started life as an early access game on Steam before making its way to most platforms and receiving widespread and deserved acclaim. It's brutal, but not so brutal that you can't eventually break through hurdles and shriek like a wild banshee the first time you beat the concierge, only to discover that you'll have to beat him many more times to the point where he's like any other enemy. Dead Cells is fantastic at making you feel like you're truly improving. You assume control of a bunch of worms, maybe, as they take control of a suit of armour and look for their sweet revenge across the grounds of a dangerous castle. Don't sweat that too much though, it's the combat that you're here for. There's a fantastic array of ways to approach any sticky situation, but the random nature of each run means that you can never be too comfortable. Perhaps the best game of its ilk, and its Castlevania DLC is also worth sinking your teeth into. Number 9, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a massive JRPG that plays like a dream on hardware that shouldn't be able to handle its scope as well as it does. A massive journey that will soak up dozens if not hundreds of hours of your life, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 boasts a gigantic open world to explore and a party of characters that you can't help but grow enamored by. We don't wish to overwhelm you when we say that you will need almost 200 hours of gameplay to reach 100% completion, which isn't even considered the game's DLC. There's a lot to learn from here, but as with any good JRPG, you'll be so absorbed in it all that you'll be able to distinguish your blades from your drivers pretty quickly. Of course, all 3 Xenoblade Chronicles games are absolutely worth your attention, and they're all on Switch too, so if you happen to like one of them, just know there's a few hundred more hours of content waiting for you. We do reckon the third one is the best one though, even if it doesn't have a talking tiger in it. Sad. Number 8, Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is the antithesis of our chaotic times. A supremely chill experience that is what you make of it, the game provides the perfect release from the stresses of modern life by just allowing you to farm carrots all day long. You technically don't even need to speak to another soul in the village and can roleplay the mysterious farmer who nobody knows if you want to. I think Harrison Ford would play them in the movie. But that would rob Stardew of some of its magic, the ability to make friends in a largely unfriendly small village. They just need to warm to you first. You can opt for a quaint life of cultivation with your spouse, or even become an adventurer and take on ghoulies for treasure. It all feels totally natural on the Switch, so whatever kind of person you want to be, Stardew provides escapism like few other games before it. If you've never done the Dew before,
I shouldn't. Do it. Not the Jedi way. Do it.
Number 7, Metroid Dread. While it was a long wait for Dreadheads, yes that is what they are called, Metroid Dread proved that 2D Metroid could still be every bit as engrossing as its prime counterparts. Who knew that basically neutering Samus could be exactly what the side-scrolling games needed to flourish once again? Facing off against the almost impenetrable enemy sentries, a lot of Dread is spent stealthily skulking around, which gives Dread a slight survival horror bent that will have you on the edge of your seat. Though perhaps too frustrating for some people, eventually getting rid of the robot nemesis who's been making your life hell for hours is a seriously satisfying reward. Couple that with the classic Metroid DNA and you have a game that was almost worth the wait. Here's hoping we aren't waiting so long for some more pain next time though. Don't do it to the Dreadheads again, Nintendo, they've been through so much. Number 6, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. One of the most effective Switch games at ruining everything this is. Many relationships and families have been ripped apart thanks to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, a chaotic evil video game if ever there was one. If you're in a bad mood or are perhaps too competitive for your own good, playing Mario Kart is not recommended, as it will prey on you and turn you into a fire-breathing vengeful dragon whenever you see a blue shell making its way to your pole position. A game that's pretty easy to just pick up and play. Even the most incompetent of non-gamers will be able to get to grips with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with little fuss, but being able to win comes down to a combination of sheer luck and staying away from first place as long as possible. It just puts a target on your back. If you need something to break the ice with a house guest, fire up Mario Kart and see what their personality is really like. If they choose Rainbow Road, run. Number 5, Hades. Arguably the best non-exclusive game available on the Nintendo Switch. Spoiler alert, that's what we're arguing here. Hades set a new standard for roguelikes and action games in general when it originally launched for consoles on the Nintendo Switch. While it has been ported to other platforms since, the bite-sized nature of its roguelike formula means the Nintendo Switch is the ideal platform to experience this Greek epic on. Playing as the titular Hades' son, Zagreus, you embark on a quest to escape the underworld in order to reunite with your mother. Unfortunately for you, escaping from the grasp of Hades himself is easier said than done, and the Lord of the Underworld is intent on throwing everything at you to stop it from happening. Oh well, guess you will just have to fall in love with about 8 different characters back at the House of Hades when you die for the millionth time. Oh no, don't make me talk to Megara, oh no. Number 4, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. What better way to say goodbye to the series than with one of the most complete Switch games you're ever likely to play. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate may be the ultimate Smash experience with an absolutely ridiculous well of content to keep players content for dozens of hours. Though you get the feeling that it will be 2050 and there will still be people sticking by Melee. Hey, when you're finished with this video, why not go and check out where that ranked on our GameCube list. Whether you're playing solo or against others, good luck with that. Ultimate is a game that just gets better the more you play. Not only do you progressively earn more characters to play as, but you can also feel yourself growing better as you best what appears to be a simple fighter that actually has a surprising amount to learn. From the swath of modes to the DLC characters to master, casual and competitive players alike are bound to find something in Ultimate to latch onto, though sadly not the complete lack of cheeks on Solid Snake. What did they do to our boy? Number 3, Luigi's Mansion 3. Luigi has spent the vast majority of his life living in the shadow of his more famous brother Mario, but when the green-suited plumber gets his moments in the spotlight, he tends to shine pretty bright. Just look at the Luigi's Mansion franchise, which has become a popular part of Nintendo's portfolio in recent years, with Luigi's Mansion 3 in particular being a series highlight. Taking the action from a mansion to a spooky haunted hotel, Luigi and friends arrive at the last resort for a vacation, only to find that the hotel is filled with ghosts. Typical. This is why everyone goes Airbnb these days. Fortunately for Luigi, he's able to team up with Professor Egad once again to start vacuuming up some ghosts, but he doesn't have to do it alone this time. The new Gooigi ability lets another player pick up a Joy-Con to join in the fun, making Luigi's Mansion 3 a brilliant co-op experience as well. No joke, this is close to being in my top 10 favourite games of all time. It's just magic really. Give it a try if you haven't. Number 2, Super Mario Odyssey. With so many games over so many decades, it's a wonder that Nintendo are still able to innovate with each new Mario game. Super Mario Odyssey is one of the franchise's most original and downright fun games, tasking the player with using a sentient cap to take over people and objects. David Cronenberg, if you're watching this, sorry to disappoint you, but it's not quite as morbid as it sounds. Cappy can allow Mario to reach places he never could and to overcome difficult obstacles with each new possession, making Odyssey feel like a different game. There's also a staggering amount of moves to track down and collect. So once you've beaten Mario's old nemesis once again, no, it's not the Taxman this time, the game is only really just beginning to open up. There's more than a hatful of things to love about this one, and that includes becoming an Italian dinosaur. And no, unfortunately, I'm not talking about the Pope. I'm saving that one for the sequel. And number 1, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild releasing with a Switch could be seen as a serious statement of intent from Nintendo, as they were delivering the most ambitious Zelda game to date for day one, so much so that people didn't know how Nintendo could ever follow it up. Somehow though, they managed to accomplish it with Tears of the Kingdom, which fundamentally improves and adds to the core experience while somehow also not blowing up the ancient Switch. Tears of the Kingdom builds on the experimentation and exploration that formed the core identity of Breath of the Wild, while also still being a quintessential Zelda game. See something huge in the distance, make your way there, and then try to climb it. You probably can. Meanwhile, new abilities like Fuse and Ultra Hand allows you as the player to create massive contraptions, vehicles, and tools to help you in your quest to save Hyrule. Well, Hyrule can wait. For now, you've got to make the kind of robot monster from 6 sticks and a Twix that would make Craig Charles faint. Master Sword? Pal, I need to master holding the sign up for this guy first. Priorities, you know? Priorities. And there you have it, the best Nintendo Switch games of all the time. And that concludes our series ranking the best games on every Nintendo console as well. I don't think we'd get here. Been pretty good fun. What do you want to see us do next? Do you want us to move on to Xbox, or do you want to see us try out Sega? Be sure to let us know down in the comments hole down below, and thank you for watching.